welcome to myself, Max McGillivray of Beanstalk. I've got a real pleasure today to have Olivia from the World Obesity Federation on. Olivia, as we said in the green room, could you announce yourself with your amazing, gorgeous name properly so I don't murder it on our behalf?
Sure.
Olivia, over to you. Who are you and who do you represent?
Hi, I'm Olivia Barata Cavalcanti, and I'm the Director of Science and Programs for the World Obesity Federation.
Fantastic. And Olivia, our title today is the World Obesity Federation, Why Fresh Sector Businesses Need to Align Themselves to this organization. And we're very privileged to have one of Olivia's great colleagues on, Rachel Thompson, from an earlier broadcast we did with our Healthy and Sustainable Food Group. And Rachel, Olivia, as you know, is brilliant. And I wanted to get Rachel on to talk specifically about the World Obesity Federation. And Rachel said, no, you need to speak to Olivia. So as we say in English, you got the hospital pass to talk to me on this subject. So let's just give a bit of background to those on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and also the podcast. The World Obesity Federation represents professional members of the scientific, medical, and research communities from over 50 regional and national obesity associations. Through their membership, they create a global community of organizations dedicated to solving the problems of obesity by ensuring that obesity is recognized as a disease and treated as much. And Olivia, as she very kindly stated, is Director of Science and Programs. And you, Olivia, you've got a decade of experience in public health with a special focus on obesity and public-private partnerships to fight non-communicable diseases. And in your role as Director of Science and Programs, you lead the organization's training, certification program, SCOPE, which addresses professional development for obesity care in healthcare systems. You also oversee MAPS, the organizational program aimed at monitoring obesity prevention and treatment in health systems across the globe. And additionally, you're involved in the charge of scientific knowledge management for the organization. Olivia, that's a big old title and a big old remit that you've got. What was your background before you got involved with the World Obesity Federation?
Yeah, so I'm actually a political scientist by training, and then after, I really wanted to do international development, and that's when I started working for, I worked for the Italian Committee for UNICEF and NGOs, and then I decided to go to, I'm maybe a step back, I'm Brazilian but lived in Italy, and then I decided to do my master's in international development in the US. And when I got there, one of the first classes that I took was global health. And then something just clicked in me, and I realized, okay, there's no way we can ever have development if we don't have health. And then I started going to really studying global health and got my master's in public health and got my doctorate in public health. And just really in this space, I realized that non-communicable diseases are the most important problem that we need to face in our generation. And so I decided to focus my research and my studies and my work in obesity.
But where I find it fascinating with individuals like yourself, and I've said this to a number of people on various other broadcasts, Olivia, you could have gone off to do anything. You could have gone off into banking. You could have gone off to be politics. It's almost like you took this philanthropic approach to actually doing good. We have a number of students, graduates watching this, and it's why did you go down that route? What swayed you to do good rather than, I don't know, chase the dollar?
That's a good question. I think it's about what gives you energy and what gives you satisfaction. And to me, to live my whole life, we only have one life that we know of. It needed to mean something. And I tried for 1 year at some point, and like, enough, with this kind of low salary, disorganization, I'm just going to work for corporate. And I lasted, I think, 13 months. And I was like, no, this is like, I go to bed at night and this gives me zero. So I went back to my passion, and honestly, I love what I do. I love the complexity of what I do. So it's
wow. And not to major on that, there's a friend of mine in the area I live in on the east of England, and he's been in insurance in London for the last 30, 40 years. And we got talking about the inevitable question about kids. And I asked him what he wanted his kid to do. And his retort was, and he didn't even let me finish the sentence, to not go into insurance. I've had no life whatsoever. And so it's fascinating that someone like yourself had a look at it and realized you didn't like it and was brave enough actually to make that change. So just those students, if you do want to make a difference, especially, and we'll come on to it with Olivia, there's so much good that you can do on the back of fresh food, or being the line to the likes of the World Obesity Federation, and to actually do good. You don't need to, Olivia, what's that bumper sticker in America? He who dies with the most toys wins. I just how ridiculous. You don't need to be materialistic. If you can actually do good in the world, you're going to do good. You're going to feel good on the back of it, as you say. So talk to us about the World Obesity Federation, for those that don't know. How long's it been going? How's it structured?
Yeah, so we've been alive for a long time, but it started very much as a research organization. It was called IASO, the Institute of the Association, the study of obesity. And then we realized that, studying obesity and just doing research and publishing papers wasn't enough, because it has become such a huge problem. But that's when we transitioned to the World Obesity Federation and started doing also policy and advocacy and, other activities to try to pragmatically reduce the problem of obesity. And right now we do our work mostly through 4 pillars. We do convening. So we host roundtables when we used to have, in-person events. We have our International Conference of Obesity, the Global Obesity Forum. So we try to put stakeholders together in the same room and talk about and understand what are the common problems, and especially what are the common solutions. We do advocacy. So we work with the UN. We are in official relationships with the WHO. And we are really pushing to get a resolution that declares that obesity is a disease. We do, as you said, we do training. So we help physicians understand what obesity is and how to talk, not only how to treat their patients, but also how to talk to their patients in a way that's not stigmatizing, that has empathy, more empathy than judgment. And finally, we have our data dissemination. We have a huge obesity observatory where anyone can go and see where not only the obesity prevalence is, but also what are the policies and what it's growing and how it's different by, from men to women. So all of that.
Okay, so if I could give you a magic wand, here's my fly swatters, my magic wand. If I could give you a magic wand to cure obesity with a few strokes, what would you do? Or am I just being completely naive?
So I do need to say that, obesity is a complex disease. So that by definition means that there is no one solution, because you're talking about genetics, you're talking about epigenetics, which is interaction with the environment. We're talking about biology, trauma, stress. There's too many things. But if I could do one thing, and it's the one thing that I also do at home, is either completely get rid or drastically reduce ultra-processed food.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I didn't really want to go down this rabbit hole, but is there a villain in all of this, that it is the manufacturers of processed food?
It's one of them. I mean, I don't like to think of the world in like, the good guys and the bad guys, but we do have to acknowledge the fact that the food that we eat today is specifically engineered and produced in a way to make us eat more. So, there are several studies now. If anyone is interested, I highly recommend to take a look at the studies by Kevin Hall. But, he took a couple years ago, so very recent, he took 2 groups of people, and gave them the same kind of nutrition. So the same amount of calories and the same breakdown in terms of proteins and all of that. But one group has minimally processed, fresh food, and the other group has had ultra processed food. And they told them, you can eat as much as you want. What happens is the group eating the ultra processed food tend to eat 500 calories more every day. There's a reason why when we open a pack of chips, crisps, you can't stop. There is it's designed to be that way. It's by default. It's actually accomplishing what it was designed to do. It's the perfect combination between salt, sugar, fat that makes your brain just want to have more of it. Which is very different than if you take the potatoes and roast them in your oven and eat them yourself. It's very different. Yeah,
and we are aware what we do. There's a number of large-scale food companies in the UK alone that employ teams of NPD. New product development individuals, and they've got their roles for all the right reasons, but they're trying to create products that are more alluring, that will sell more, and the consumer will come back more and more to consume more. So is there is this magic bullet to somehow legislate this? So in the UK, we've had a sugar tax on some areas, but there's calls for a lot more to be done. And as we were saying in the green room, Beanstalk, we work with a huge number of large UK, European, international fresh produce businesses. And the issue that they've got, Olivia, is that they as a whole are not allowed to have brands with the retailers, because the retailers don't want them to have brands, because that would allow the supplier to create more leverage and ask for more money from the retailers. So it's very difficult for them to have brands. You look at the processed food side, whether it be pizzas, whether it be energy drinks, whether it be crisps, the bulk of those businesses have brands, and that allows them to be able to charge more, whether that be through the retailer to the consumer. So Olivia, we both know that stat is a can of Coke, that about 25 to 30% of everything of the money that is spent on that can of Coke is then spent on marketing. And I've said it a number of times before, wherever you go in the world, two people have been there before you: the guy selling Michael Jackson t-shirts and the guy selling Coca-Cola. And you look at the issues of Coca-Cola consumption and the likes of Mexico, which is a huge problem. So would you have advice from the World Obesity Federation as to how fresh produce companies, which in our view do good, because you can't sort of eat, I'm not being glib, you can't eat too much fresh produce. What can we do as a sector to promote our sector more, to get retailers to sell more, or to get the consumers to buy more? What can the fresh produce sector do you think?
So first, I just want to take a step back and say that besides from, spending 75% of, the profit of every can of Coke in marketing, we also need to highlight the fact that, those food and beverage companies have also spent a lot of money into producing research that says that the obesity problem is due to physical activity, not to what we eat. So also it's important to remind ourselves that, they're also shifting the conversation. And I think that's the problem, right? When you have a big voice, you are able to shift the conversation, to shift the focus. So people say, oh yeah, I should be exercising more. No, you should actually be eating better, first of all. So that's one thing that I just want to put out there. I think there's a lot to do in just educating people. And I really don't say that in a patronizing way, but really for people to understand that I think there is a lot of ideas now. And this narrative that, but it's so much work to cook, and it's so much time, and it's so much easier to buy something, pre-packaged or done. Actually not, in the long run, if you think about what do you have to do for your health, and just in terms of medicines and what you need to do to take care of yourself and your kids. And so I think one thing to do is really to make people understand the value of eating minimally processed food. And that really is the key. It's not only to obesity, many non-communicable diseases. So that's really important. And we need to have regulation around ultra processed food. We need to. So in the UK, I don't see as much as a difference than what I used to see in the US, for example, where it was incredibly cheap to eat junk food, and incredibly expensive to eat like an organic piece of fruit or vegetable. Yeah. So we need to, yes, on one hand, I understand we need to ask ourselves, why is it so expensive to eat this? But you also need to ask yourself, why is it so cheap to eat this? Yeah. There's something wrong here.
Yeah, and it's fascinating the bit that you state about regulation, and presumably because these larger food companies, these global food companies or drink companies, because they've got such a loud voice, because they've got the money, they can lobby government to say we're paying this amount of tax. We don't think there's the issue. It's the fact there's no exercise. You government must go off and push the general populace to go off and do more exercise. But do you think there's a sea change? Do you think there's actually going to be a positive from the pandemic? In that in the UK, it was just on a year ago that our Prime Minister Boris Johnson went down with COVID, and when he successfully recovered, one of the things that he stated was that one of the reasons he got so ill was because he was a fatty, because he was 18 stone and he should have been 14, 15 stone. And we, as a nation in the UK, we're going to make sure that everyone is fit, because we can't put this burden on the NHS. And that there has been talk in the UK that we will start to see changes, that we will see more regulations coming in. But it was about 2 months ago, the I probably better not name them, but one of the main trade federations representing the food groups was saying exactly what you were saying earlier, Olivia, that we, the Food Federation, we put so much into the company and into the country. We employ so many people. We pay this amount of taxes. It's up to Joe Public as to whether they eat our product or not. We're not to blame. But it feels very much like the arguments over smoking. Just stop people smoking, and some people won't like it. But as a whole, the smoking ban within the UK and Europe has been a tremendous success. Further back, you look at the seatbelt compulsory element that came in, and lots of people complained about that. But the number of lives have been so regulation.
Absolutely, it works. I mean, obviously, individual is not the same as population, but the minute I moved to the US, I quit smoking because, a pack of cigarettes 15 years ago was $13. I couldn't smoke anywhere. So I'm like, this is too expensive and I can't do it anywhere anyway. So, I'm just going to stop. So obviously we know that it works. And I think the problem here is that, again, we are shifting the blame, saying we cannot put this pressure on the NHS, but then we're putting the same pressure on the individual. Whereas we know that in terms of overweight and obesity, it's not about individual choice. We live in a world that gives us a specific environment. And right now we live in an obesogenic environment, meaning that everything around us screams for us to eat unhealthy food. Is the marketing, is the pressure, is the time, is the stress, is the way that they're packaged, is where they're put in the supermarket. Usually when I used to do kind of community health interventions, the first thing that I would say to people that didn't know where to start, like, just stay on the outside of the supermarket, just buy fresh, don't even go in the middle, and that already will help you. So I think the UK specifically now has a very important moment with Brexit and just, signing new trade deals to show the public that the country is really committed to fight obesity, because we know that the European Union, as much as we can complain, has a much stronger and rigorous regulation around food than, for example, the US has.
Yep.
So if we can maintain that instead, we know we have the same exact food. It can be a ketchup, it can be a cereal. The way that it's done here, it has different ingredients than the same box that is produced for the American population. Because in the US, you are allowed to use cheaper ingredients that are not considered suitable for human consumption in Europe. Wow.
Okay. So if we looked at, and then so the fresh produce sector, to me, they seem impotent. That they can do good, but they can't interact with the public. They can't get their products promoted as much as possible. We're doing a series with a great group in the States called the United Fresh. So they're a trade group out there, and where the States actually on fresh produce are really good at is branding and marketing. And they've got a perception that we in the UK and Europe were a lot better on sustainability and packaging, which we are. So the two of us were working together, and I've got a great guy coming on next week who's a branding expert on tomatoes. You were talking earlier about tomatoes from Ghana, and he's created an amazing brand out there called Flavor Fresh, and they've got a gazillion followers out there. So we're going to get him on to try and explain to UK and European fresh produce companies as to how they can create this magic dust. But again, Olivia, I'm sorry to sort of force it on you. If you were in front of, as you are, 500, 1,000 people from the fresh produce sectors, what could they do with you, with the World Obesity Federation, to perhaps adopt you and your colleagues to have you on their website, to have you on the label? What would you like to see from the fresh produce sectors?
I think together, and I was thinking about that, as we were talking, I think we definitely need to work a little bit more on education. And I think most people really don't realize the power of, fresh food. And it's people talk about, those magic bullets, what can I do? And, and it's, in my case, obviously obesity, what's the treatment? And you might need pharmacological treatment, obviously, but you will also need fresh food in your life. The same way that you also need exercise, even if it's not the main thing that will make you lose weight. So I think I think we can work together on education, communication, helping people understand how, in a way, how easy it is, how hard because of the structure, the environment that we live in, but on the other way, how easy it is to really take control of your own health.
Yep.
And improve it. And again, obesity is complex, or many other factors, but this is something that 100% will help anyone.
Yeah. And if I'm looking critical, just thinking of a direct example I have that I told you about 3-4 years ago. I rode a motorbike from London to Cape Town to promote fresh produce. When I came back, I did 40-50 school presentations with my motorbike, and I was very kindly sponsored by Pink Lady Apples. And at one particular school I went to, so it was a primary school, so kids that are under the age of 12, at the end, all the kids would come up and I'd give them an apple and say, what's your big adventure going to be? And there was this boy, I think his name was Charlie, age 10, who refused the apple. And I asked the teacher just to put him to one side. And at the end, I went up to him and said, Charlie, why don't you want this apple? And he was very embarrassed to say that at the age of 10, he'd never had an apple. And I could see where this was going. And as part of my presentation, I have cans of energy drinks. And I'd said to him, Charlie, have you ever had one of these? And he said, yeah, I had one of those for breakfast. So what we then did was, through the school, we found out his address. And Pink Lady very kindly sent over 2 cartons of Pink Lady apples. So what's the number? Oh, crikey, be about 120 apples. And they landed with the family on a Friday, just before they were about to have a family barbecue. And on the Monday, the mum came in to see the headmaster to say that she knew that she'd been feeding her children badly, and that they'd all got into eating these apples, and they all loved them, and how Charlie now was addicted to Pink Lady apples. So one thing I'm learning more and more is that there's this whole stat about 6 out of 10 kids don't know where fresh produce comes from, and it's important to educate them, but to actually get them to taste it. Again, you were talking about tomatoes earlier, to get them to taste the likes of Pink Lady apples or spinach or raspberries or whatever it would be. So that education point is so key. So I suppose it's all this. Here goes my big phraseology. So it's that joined up thinking. If we can get government, if we can get retailers, if we can get the schools, and it's not meant to be a guilt trip, but I think again, this COVID situation, everyone knows that to do good by eating properly is going to counter them against any possible diseases. But we need to adopt the likes of you, Olivia, and your colleagues more so.
Yeah, and I think, there are several different individual stories, and we can try to help individuals. And I also think it's important not to blame the parents. We need to understand everyone has their circumstances, and we don't know what's going on. We don't know how much they're working. We know what education they had. So again, more empathy, less judgment. But we need to think at a population level. What can we do just so that we make the choice of fresh produce instead of the ultra processed food the default choice? And then if you have someone that really wants to have the bag of crisps and the Coke, that's okay. Yeah. But the default choice, close to the, at the end of the supermarkets, close to the cashiers, you should have apples and bananas, not chocolate.
Yeah.
So that, we need to make it the default choice. There's it's about choice architecture. We need to make it easy for people to eat fresh food. Yeah.
And do you think there might be some positive manipulation to have here? You look at oil companies, Olivia, how they're and car manufacturers, how they're all now moving over to electric, whether it be wind turbines for the oil companies, whether it be electric car manufacturing for those that used to make horrible diesel cars. Do you think we can persuade the food manufacturing companies to actually adopt fresh food? You look at the plant-based revolution that's happening at the moment, and it's almost like they can smell money. They can smell this fashion. So do you think we can positively drive societal change by getting those food companies to move away from making gloopy cheese to actually doing something with fresh fruit?
I think in some markets, yes. My concern here is that, again, because we go back to, there are 5, maybe 6 multinational food and beverage companies in the world that produce kind of mostly of, what we eat. And I think in some markets where you do have, for example, this movement towards plant-based and you have more health advocates, etc., yes. But then I'm afraid that what's going to happen is that they're going to offset that cost selling more of that ultra processed junk food in low and middle income countries. And that's what I don't want to see.
Right.
So I just think we really need to think at a global level here, because even with tobacco, it's great what they did.
Yeah.
But the same way that they were having, very hard restrictions on marketing, and they had to have pictures on packages and all of that in some countries, they were selling single cigarettes in other countries.
Yeah. Well done. I forgot that example, that they basically moved their sales direction into the likes of Africa. Wherever I went in Africa, you'd see kids smoking. And
Nestle in Brazil. I'm from Brazil, so they have a whole structure where they employ people from the favelas, so the slum women, which is great that they're giving them employment. But then those women use their personal connections to sell chocolate, candy, all the ultra processed food door to door. So they were able to actually penetrate the slums. Yeah. And literally go door to door to sell that. And so again, I just think that we need to think of this at the global level, because we can't leave anyone behind.
No,
we really can't.
I intimated earlier about the example of Mexico, that the average Coca-Cola consumption by an adult is horrendous. It's something like 45 gallons a year, because again, that penetration that they've got. So the likes of the United Nations, are they looking to assist, or are they a bit impotent?
I mean, the United Nations is a great mechanism for international cooperation, but at the end of the day, they are made by states. So if you have states in there that are not necessarily in favor of certain trade agreements, it's just not going to happen. They don't have a life of their own. So I think we still need to, I do personally believe that recognizing obesity as a disease is a step that would also help people understand. It's like, okay, so this is a disease. And, once something has a name, and it's official, then you can start monitoring. Then you can say, okay, so what are the causes? And then what can I do to prevent? What can I do to treat? So it has a cascade of positive effects. So I think that will help. I do think that COVID-19 has shed a light in the importance of just overall health. At the same time, I also see people locked down and tending to buy more, actually not to buy fresh food, because they don't want to, get out of the house to buy more and more. Yep. So we need to be careful as well, and understand that people still need to go out and buy their fresh food is really important.
Yeah.
But I think we have a window of opportunity here. We certainly do.
And just to reiterate, with the UN and the FAO, it is the year of fruit and veg, and the timing of that couldn't be more fortuitous. And we've hopefully got an individual coming on from the UN to talk about that, so we can help them present that more. What do you think is the likelihood of obesity being labelled as being declared as a disease, and what's the timescale?
I think it's very likely. I think we could potentially see something next year. We've been working hard for several years. I think it's great that there is all this interest, and people say, oh, how come obesity now? It's like it's not a surprise. We've been working on this for a long time. So I think it is likely to happen. There's also going to be the UN Food System Summit this year. So there is a lot of focus shifting towards food. And I'm so excited to see that happening. And I'm an optimistic, I wouldn't be doing this job if I weren't. So
yeah, and I think it's fantastic, Olivia, what you and your colleagues have done with the World Obesity Federation to be educated by yourself that if obesity could be declared as a disease, and that the food manufacturing companies could look to steer themselves in a slightly different direction, as per the example we gave of tobacco and the oil companies. But it's not going to be an easy ride. But again, that's why we're really keen for fresh produce companies to look at you, to look at the World Obesity Federation and see what links that could be had in the long term. So just to ask you that question again, if companies approached you just to get guidance as to what they could do on a marketing perspective, or what they could just learn from you so they could put it into their marketing strategy, would that be okay for them to reach out to yourself and the colleagues?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes. You know, I don't know if you have the possibility of putting up, you know, either my email address or website. Absolutely. We're a small team, but we're very eager to work, and we do a lot. And yes, we are working with, you know, we really need to change also food systems in general. You know, it has an effect on personal health and planetary health. Like, we all know that. You know, eating fresh food is good for yourself. It's good for the planet.
Yeah. And I'm going to push you even further into a corner. Is it okay if we intimated to some of the trade conferences, be it virtual or hopefully when we get back to normal, to engage with yourself and your colleagues,
absolutely,
to get you on stage so that we can hear the story of the World Obesity? Would that be okay to promote?
Yes,
as well?
Absolutely. We'd love to meet you in person as well.
Because again, I know this will be about the fourth or fifth time I've reiterated it. You've got these big machines of these food manufacturing companies who are very cash rich. They've got lots of firepower in terms of their marketing. And then we got these fresh produce businesses that are doing so much good. We had an amazing lady on last week, Nina Patel from Fresh Express in India, and they grow amazing grapes on an organic basis, and they have 1,000 outreach growers, and then 90% of them are women. And Nina is really championing domestic abuse and trying to stop its spread within her community, and they've done so well, but they want to sell more of their product in the UK and Europe. So we're looking. So there's so many amazing backstories. In comparison to I get an email from the CEO of McDonald's because I signed up to it just to see what was happening, and he emailed me yesterday morning at 8:10 to say, "Morning, Max. What are you going to do for breakfast? Why don't you have a drive-through McDonald's and start your day in the right way?"
Yeah, please don't.
No, it's just and that's where we got to learn from the likes of those companies, the fresh produce sector, to learn that, as you said, Olivia, when we go to the supermarkets, we should just go around the edge and just buy fresh food.
Buy fresh food, go around the edge. If you buy anything, you know, again, I used to do some community health interventions with Latinos in the US. And I would say, you know, usually sometimes you talk to people, especially moms, and they're just busy, they're working 3 jobs and they don't have time for all the, you know, nutritional information. Just like, if you have to buy anything that has ingredients, if it has more than 4 lines, forget about it. If it has anything that you don't know how to pronounce, just don't buy it. Just keep it simple.
Wow. There we go. That what a way to end this masterclass. And Olivia, I've got to ask you, what's your favorite fresh produce?
Ooh, kale. I have it every day. I actually have it every day. Yeah.
And in what form?
I usually like to cook with a lot of onions and lime.
And lime.
Yeah.
All right. That's just fantastic.
It's really good. It's really good. And you can put it on a quinoa. Sometimes I also blend it with other green things, and you can use it as like a sauce for your pasta if you want. So yeah, I like it. I definitely have it every day.
You bang that one totally out of the park. So just to wrap up, the fresh produce sectors, everyone, UK, European, internationally, we'd love you to engage with Olivia and Rachel, the rest of the team at the World Obesity Federation. You can see where we were going with this one, the link between them and the fresh produce sector. As they do more good, especially if they can get obesity registered as a disease, you can see where this is going, be mostly in a marketing term for the fresh produce sector, but also by doing good. So contact with Olivia and the World Obesity Federation. We'll put the links top and bottom. And Olivia, it'd be fantastic if it was okay to get you back on. And
I'd love to.
We'll introduce you and the team to all the trade groups at our end.
I would love to.
Just to continue this conversation.
Love to. Absolutely. It would be a pleasure.
Excellent. Right. I'm off to go get some kale. Olivia, you look after yourself, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank
Olivia.
you.
Keep safe.
Bye.